Here we go. What you think about Don Lemon's comments? All right. Let me tell you what my biggest problem with the Don Lemon thing was. You ready? Why is it that people think offering the prevailing sentiment is somehow courageous? Like the whole premise or the way that this was offered was like in this context of tough love and that somebody has to be the one to say these things. I'm sorry. If I'm wrong, you guys let me know that I'm wrong. But when have we had a hard time finding somebody saying these things about black people? Really? Like, how hard is it to find somebody to say, black people, you guys need to, stop being lazy and pull your damn pants up? Right? This is a hustle. This is a money grab. I feel very confident saying this is a money grab. And the reason I feel very confident saying that this is a money grab is there's no way in the world that you can look in the camera the way that man did and say, in reference to Bill O'Reilly, Bill didn't go far enough. You tell me right now, no matter whether you agree with Bill O'Reilly or not, when is the last time you heard Bill O'Reilly say anything and then say, Bill O'Reilly didn't go far enough? I admit I don't watch Bill O'Reilly do his thing very often, but there's never been a time that I felt as though you saw Bill O'Reilly say something and be like, damn, yeah, I sure think that Bill needed to go a little bit farther with that one. Right? I've never heard that, not once. The thing is this. We can get into the back and forth about all these little things he's talking about. Well, black people need to stop using the N-word. Well, I saw their silly little special on the N-word, at least parts of it, and realized that, well, maybe that's not the case because that discussion they had was so stupid. Stop littering. Okay. Stop littering. That's what we got. So yeah, stop littering. Pull your pants up. Because that'll fix everything. Just pull your pants up. You ain't got no job? Man, pull your pants up. You'll be paid in no time. And then there were a couple of other things. Here was the problem with what Don Lemon said, and nobody talked about it. So Lemon's point on the littering was he's lived in lived in black neighborhoods. He lived in these white neighborhoods. And in these white neighborhoods, he never sees anywhere that litter is a problem. But in black neighborhoods, he just sees people stand right next to a trash can and throw the litter on the ground, right? Like, that was his argument. He doesn't see it among white people. You know what's funny, though? My parents, because I didn't grow up in a predominantly black neighborhood. My parents live in a predominantly, if not 100%, black neighborhood, right? 100%. There's no problem with littering. There's no problem with any of these things that he talks about. You know what else is a coincidence? The people there have money. The people have money. They're paid. It's a off Cascade Road in Atlanta, right outside the perimeter. It's old folks with money. They got paper. Like, not necessarily rolling and swimming in money. We ain't in one of those neighborhoods. But the people got money. And I'm not saying that people with money are anyhow like intrinsically better or don't do these things. What I am saying, though, is everything that Don Lemon talked about as being specific to black people was specifically about poor black people. That's what it was. Like, every black person is just walking around with their pants down. Every black person is just walking around littering. Every black person is out here having these children out of wedlock and everything else. And you remember some old, just because you can have a baby doesn't mean that you should have a baby, which begs the question, what exactly are you saying? He didn't say that in the context of preventing, he didn't say preventing pregnancy. He didn't say that people need to, like teenagers, whoever it is, need to avoid being pregnant. He said that just because you can have a baby doesn't mean you should have a baby. So what steps are you saying that people should take to make sure they don't have these babies? You see what I'm saying? There's a lot hanging out there. There's a lot hanging out there. A lot. And all under the guise of tough love. All under the guise of tough love. You know what the crock of that is? This is the same problem I had with the president's speech at Morehouse. You can't take your black folks ain't shit sort of message everywhere, right? So when you go to Morehouse and you start talking about, and you try to put it in the context of these guys and how they need to be the example, but you still talk about not having these kids out of wedlock and fatherhood and all this Moynihan report stuff, right? You're still doing all of that. Did that room need your message? Right? So you go to Morehouse at their graduation and you talk about how black people need to stop having these kids out of wedlock. Did that room need that message? Is that message to that room, or are you giving that message in that room so other people can hear your message, which begs the question of who do you expect to hear your message? So when you're doing a news show on CNN, I don't know the demographics of who watches that show that he was on. I don't. I don't know the numbers. I don't know who's on it. But how many of the people that are littering and having all these children out of wedlock and rampantly using the so-called N-word and everything else, how many of those people who needed that tough love were listening to Don Lemon? How many of those people who needed that tough love were watching his show? How many of them are going on the Huffington Post or enter any of these other websites to read about what Don Lemon said? Because if those people aren't listening to what you say, and those people aren't hearing what you say, and your message is not put forth intentionally to reach those people, then my guess is you're not talking to those people. You were talking about those people for the purpose of entertaining an audience, at which point this stops being about love and this starts being about you. It starts being about you, the speaker. It starts being about what gains you can get from what you offer. And when you offer that and then tell people to bring it as if you are looking for a fight, as if you are looking for an argument, it raises the perfectly fair question as to whether you're simply doing this for a level of attention. But unless you're taking that message to the people that need to hear it, then don't tell me this was love, because nothing sounded loving. You can't say some mean shit and then call it love and talk about it being tough love. That's what people do all the time when they want to be jerks. Man, it's out of love. But if your love don't come through, there is no point to it. If you do not convey your love and you do not make it clear, that is your weakness. If the love is absent in your tone, if the love is absent in the way you look when you say it, if the love is absent in your words, then this isn't tough love. This is grandstanding and this is hustling. And it appears to be hustling. Hold on one second. Now, you want to know what our biggest problem is? What the biggest problem is? I want you to read something from my advisor. from graduate school. It's a gentleman named Sandy Darity. Sandy is probably the most brilliant thinker in the United States. I say that sincerely. Like, I wish I had finished that PhD so that I could say that I got a PhD and I studied under Sandy Darity. And I did study under him, and I am a better man for it. But here's some things that I think that people need to hear and to understand, because so many folks are going to tell you that if black people would just pull their pants up and act a little nicer and act a certain way, then there wouldn't be these problems. All right? You ready to hear some stats? Listen to this. Black people with a high school diploma and some college education have a higher unemployment rate than white high school dropouts as of 2011. Black folks with similar parental education and income and more years of schooling and credentials than whites, higher unemployment rate. Black men with no criminal record have worse odds of getting a job call back than white males with a criminal record. I want you to let that last one soak in for a second. All right? Black men with no criminal record are less likely to get a phone call about a job than white men with a criminal record. And you're going to tell me that black people's problem is pulling their pants up? Are you kidding me? Like, that is amazing to me. That is amazing. So every time one of these morons comes out here and it's just like, wait, man, if y'all just pull your pants up, everything will be okay. The reason y'all are in this condition is because of you. The only people that anybody ever says that to are black folks. We're the only ones that people say that to. I want you to think about political election after political election. When it comes down for these battleground states, right? What are the battleground states? Florida, Ohio, Michigan, I guess Wisconsin would count in that heading. Florida's always one. Florida's a little different. Pennsylvania is another one, right? Yeah, Virginia. But think about those ones in the north, right? Really like the Midwestern, like the Rust Belt types of cities, right? How many different talks, how many different speeches have you heard people go in there and it's always about how America has failed them? Hold on one second. Whoever said that California is a battleground state, sit this one out, baby. No disrespect. Sit this one out. Anyway, anytime somebody goes to give a talk for that constituency, right, to get those votes, corporate America has let you down. Wall Street has let you down. The plant closed and the plant never opened back up. Like, it sounds like a Bruce Springsteen song, right? Like it always does. You have been betrayed by this system. Nobody ever thinks they need tough love. Nobody ever does. It's all about what the last group did to you or what this other group wants to do to you. That's always the context that you wind up getting those things in when people go talk to those white folks. That's how it goes. It always is. It never fails. When people come talk to us, it's all about what we doing wrong. Like, do you understand how offensive it is as a black person, given the numbers and the statistics that I just offered you, right? Do you realize how frustrating it is for every time something goes wrong with us, that you looking at us like, what's wrong with y'all? And then white people who have the greatest advantage that anyone can have in this country, which is being white. Nothing is ever their fault. And you wonder why people walk around with some feeling of entitlement. Because somebody's always telling them that when something doesn't go right, it's somebody else's fault. And look, I'm not even saying that that statement is wrong. I'm just saying nobody ever says it to black people. Nobody ever does. Like, tell me one time that you've heard a talk or heard a speech where somebody got up in front of a room full of white people and said, you know what? This is y'all's problem. People don't even do that with racism. When racism comes up, they come look at us and be like, hey, well, how do we fix this racism? Well, shit, I don't know. Don't you think I'd have fixed it by now if I knew how to do that? Like, trust me, you can say black people don't know how to unify, but if we could all get together and have a meeting to figure out how to kill racism, man, we'd be running that shit with Robert's Rules of Order, baby. Hands raised, more polite than you've ever seen. It wouldn't be nothing like the movie at the Magic Johnson Theater. Oh, no, 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 no. We'd be good. Come together right now. Should we let white people come in and watch? Y'all can sit up in the balcony as long as y'all don't interrupt our orderly meeting. We get that done, right? So we're supposed to fix whatever our cultural malfunctions are, and we're supposed to fix the racism at the same damn time, right? This is all easy. This is all common sense stuff. This isn't difficult to grasp or to glean. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about people and you're not talking to people, don't call it love. If you want to call it like some level of observation, or you want to say that it has some sort of intellectual value, then say something that has intellectual value. If you want to say that what you're doing is advancing thought, then you can't say something that people have been saying for hundreds of years. That's not going to work. Like, you want to talk about the thing with being fatherless in jail and everything else, then talk about that. But there is no shortage of people making the point that black folks ain't shit. They did a whole trilogy on CNN making that very point. You guys may have seen it. They did a whole trilogy about it. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. But I'm noticing that every time CNN want to get together and talk about race, it's always in the context of what's wrong with black people. And the reason it works is that black people sign up to watch it every time. They kept running that Black in America dribble because they kept selling it out. They kept selling the ads. They kept selling the ads. They kept selling the ads. And I just don't feel like white people are watching it that much. I haven't seen the numbers, but that's hard for me to believe. We keep going for it. We do. But nobody really wants to talk about the depths of what the racism is. Nobody does. But you got Don Lemon, and Don sat in that camera, and you looked at him. He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew it. He was like, that's why he sounded nervous and stammering at the start, because he knew it was his star turn. He knew that was his time on camera. And I mean, look, I haven't talked to the man, so I could be wrong. I'll put that out there. I could be wrong. But that looked like a man that knew what he was trying to do and decided that he was going to ride this thing out. Why? Because stuff like what he said always pays. And there'll always be enough black people out there to be like, Don's right. We need these little whippersnappers to start pulling up their pants. How you ever going to get anywhere you pull down your pants? You got to run and you fall down. And of course, people can stand a little less. But something that people need to be honest with themselves about, and I feel that they've been dishonest about for so long. Americans in general, black people being no different than anybody else, but Americans in general take their cues on what is or is not appropriate and acceptable from white people. White people are the dominant cultural group in this country. And the lack of respect that you see from black people toward black people is really no different than the lack of respect that you see toward black people from white people. Now, what I find to be interesting is that every day somebody's out here telling black people how they need to act more like white people and how we need to be more like white people. But then those same people who say that never say anything about how white people might need to start treating black folks with more respect. And that's not to say that black people don't need to treat black people with more respect. The reason is people need to treat black people with more respect. And people just don't. Like you would say, well, black on black crime, and that's been a big misnomer for the longest. But, if we talk about the black on black crime and why this happens, well, guess what? If the respect or value of black lives as a core value is that they are not to be respected and not to be valued, I'm trying to figure out why you expect black people to act any different. And that's not to say that it's white people's responsibility to make black folks show respect for each other, right? I'm not even saying that. I'm not coming close to saying that. But what I'm saying is the larger issue is the general level of disrespect toward black people. That's what it is. And there's really not but so much need to particularize that to whether it's black people doing it or white people doing it. There's just not a lot of respect for black people. And if the overarching society treated black people with more respect, then what happened? Like, let me ask you this. This is a serious question. And I guess I'm asking it rhetorically just for you to consider. But how many people do you come across that as they get more and more money and become more and more successful, subsequently have more and more respect for black people? How many? People just think so little of us, and people think that we deserve so little, and people think that we are worthy of so little. And I just don't know why people think it's so crazy that black folks would feel the same way. And look, that breaks my heart. That's incredibly disheartening for me to see when it comes up. But the major level of disrespect that I see toward black people, it ain't the people littering on the street. It's the people who get somewhere and then with scorn look down on people that they often don't even know. And I just don't get that. I just don't see how generally anybody can't appreciate the struggle that so many black people go through and then spend the entire time talking about what they do wrong. Break a man's leg and say he's crippled. That to me is what all of that ultimately comes down to. Because then you go fix that stuff and it's something else. And worth noting with Lemon, all right, look, I talked all that, I'm not stunting. I promise I'm not stunting. I'm not. But okay, look, all right, this is where I live, right? I didn't live here 3 months ago, all right? I am kind of, sort of, in a different world here than I have ever been in before, all right? This is new. I'm telling you, man, the higher up you go in this, the stronger the racism gets. Like, it really, really, really gets bigger. I think I've told you different things that have happened to me since I've been here. Like, I live in this building. I called the cable man last week because I need to get the internet humming, right? So I go downstairs to meet the cable man, and I'm down at the desk. And the cable man comes in, and I see him. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I shake his hand. And then he turned around and started looking at his phone and stuff. And my man at the desk had to talk to the cable man and be like, this is who you're waiting on. Like, he never, ever considered the possibility that I actually had lived in that building. When the guys came in to put in my microwave, as I believe I told you, they sat down there in Spanish and were trying to figure out how in the world I had the money to live here, and then ultimately came to the conclusion that I must play for the Miami Heat. Chris Rock said it best. He says, this racism thing ain't this I can't get a cab. Like the more ambitious he got, the more racism that he witnessed. And I say that to say, I don't see how you can be a guy in Don Lemon's position, and you can talk about this, whether conforming or whatever it is. I don't see how you can rise to the heights that Don Lemon has managed to rise to and not feel the power of the racism. I just don't see how. I mean, it's really impossible. Like, my work situation is great. Like, the people that I work with, I haven't had a time that I've experienced that with this particular crew of people that I work with. I haven't. Like, real talk, I have not. But I'm telling you, being around here and just seeing the way I get treated, going places that I can, quote unquote, now can go, however it is that you want to spin it, I don't see how anybody can get higher and higher up on this chain and then try to discount the role of racism. I just don't. And when you get up and start saying that these are the problems with black people, that's what you're ultimately doing. If you're not standing up first talking about racism, then you're getting this all the way backwards, because this is the greatest thing that we've ever had to deal with. This is the most difficult thing that we've ever had to deal with. It's the most intractable hurdle that we have to fight, and it's the fight that we aren't getting any help with. You can make the argument about other stuff that black folks can do for themselves. Yeah, that's fine, but we can't fix that one. And we can fix everything else among black people that goes wrong. That's not even speaking as, I don't speak of black people as a monolith, but I'm saying for every black person at every step of the way, right? Whatever problems that black people have, we could literally fix them all, and none of it would matter because the racism would still be there. And that's the one that we do not have the power to fix. And that's the one that Bill O'Reilly exacerbates for a living. And Bill O'Reilly is the man that Don Lemon chose to co-sign. Now you think about that for a second. I'll go back and give you those numbers again. And I wish Sandy had put a source, but look, man's a professor in public policy at Duke. Black folks with a high school diploma and some college education have a higher unemployment rate than white high school dropouts. Black folks from families with similar parental education and income and more years of schooling and credentials than whites, higher unemployment rate. Black men with no criminal record have worse odds of getting job callbacks than white men with criminal records. Pull your pants up. Stop saying the dreaded N-word. Stop having kids out of wedlock. Then what you gonna do? Then what's gonna fix that? Then how you gonna fix that? Stop littering. Then you tell me what good all your tough love is gonna be then. How good's it gonna be? The whole game in this always is to tell people, well, just go to school and do all of these things, and then you do all these things, and then you get beat over the head. You see what I'm saying? Like, no matter what happens to be, no matter what it is that people have told us to do, you go ahead and do it and think something's gonna change. That's why I look at all you morons who tip heavy talking about you representing for the race when you over tip. Then it's gonna be something else. That's how it works. That's how it goes. That's it. So yeah, once again, I ain't saying nothing to indicate that black people don't have problems that need to be fixed. And you know how I know that black people got problems that need to be fixed? Because they're people, and people have problems that need to be fixed. There's only one set of people that's always bandied about in the media as needing to fix those problems, and it's us. And I look at the majority, and every problem that they have is somebody else. Like, dude, do you realize the level of poverty that white people are dealing with right now? Seriously, do you realize this? I looked at this one in the New York Times over the weekend. This is yesterday. And the title is called Fighting Back Against Wretched Wages. And the whole thing is that we're starting to see one-day strikes because the economic situation is so bad. Like, I ain't saying it's sweet for white people, right? Not all of them. But the economic situation is so bad that we are seeing one-day strikes at these jobs because people are trying to make more money. We're seeing things happen where the level of poverty among white people is growing at a staggering level. A staggering level. And every article I read about it is basically in the context of whose fault it is that they ain't got no money. It's always somebody else's fault. It's never somebody else's fault when it's black people. It never is. But yo, the reason why this is really scary and why you need to pay attention is as guys like Don Lemon blame everything against black people, history has shown us that when the money gets low, then the hungriness show. Jay-Z and Scarface tell you that one, right? And when the money gets low for white people, you got this little tricky situation, right? Money gets low for white people, and you would think, well, hey, all the people with low money should start getting together, combine their power, and then maybe put together the interests that will be able to do things that can change their condition, right? Makes perfect sense, right? Doesn't it make perfect sense? I'm broke, you broke, we all need better jobs. Let's get this together and let's make that happen, right? It's never worked like that. Every time it has worked like that, there's been some divisive political force that has made it a point to split those two groups up. And what force has been used to split them up? Racism. Every single time, racism. It never fails. But don't you worry, Don Lemon. You'll be getting a lot of pats on the back of people saying what you're saying is right. Because God forbid people look up and realize that this game might be just a little bit rigged. I had mentioned Sandy Darity to you earlier. And just to let you know something, this is dead up in books, okay? Just to let you know something. I read a book, and what made me want to study under Sandy. I read a book called Persistent Disparity that he and a professor named Sam Myers at the University of Minnesota did. And the point they made about it was like, yeah, things are getting bad for black people. But the biggest reason things are getting bad for black people is a general squeezing of the middle class. The middle class is getting smaller and smaller and smaller for everybody. It's not just black people, white people too. The middle class is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the college game is getting rigged. It's making it harder for you to work your way up the ladder. Like, I think I kind of snuck in on a lot of stuff at the end. But it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That means there's going to be a whole lot of angry poor people. God damn it, I hope they don't spend all their time being angry at each other. Subscribe at iTunes. Subscribe at Stitcher. Peace.